Hello, sports fans. We're back. I'm Buddy Martin. We've got the show tonight you all love to love. And we've got Ali Peek Wilbur and waiting in the wings in the orange and blue room. And we've got an interview with a very promising young offensive lineman, Austin Barber. We'll have a little bit of that tonight, a sneak preview. And, of course, that means David Moulton. It's on the Wednesday night. That means we got the sweet and sour, Ali and Dave. All coming your way right here. Tell your friends and neighbors to join us right now. The Buddy Martin Show is back on the air once again, believe it or not.
It's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye!
You ready, champ? I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Good evening. It's the Buddy Martin Show. We're back again, believe it or not, by the miracle of whatever it is that gets us on the air every night. But we're glad to be with you tonight. It's a Wednesday night, and that's always a good night for the Buddy Martin Show. We're heard, by the way, on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, soon to be on Fridays with our Best Fridays in Football show with Urban Meyer. So lots of good stuff happening, but none better than tonight. We've got our friend Ali Peek Wilbur. As soon as I can do this live read right here, for Titan MRI, we're going to bring her on, and she always brightens our day. Titan MRI, worth a short drive to Gainesville. No insurance, no problem. You can pay with cash or card. Same-day scheduling if you need it. You can start feeling better today because Titan MRI is North Central Florida's premier independent MRI facility. Come see why hundreds of patients are visiting our Gainesville location from Ocala, Marion County, and the villages. That's TitanMRI.com. And good evening to the star of the show, Ali Peek. What's up, Ali?
Not too much. Getting ready to go on a trip to North Carolina. So, all the things that come along with packing for a trip. And this is the first time I've left my babies, who are almost 4 years old. So I guess not really babies, overnight. So a little nervous over here too.
Oh, you mean you're not taking them? You're going without them?
I'm not. Eric and I are going together. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, you deserve it. And I know you like to be close to those babies at all times.
I do.
They're your babies no matter how big they get. Okay. That's just how it is for mamas. So, been watching some of your stuff this week as usual. You always do a great job. Don't forget you can check her out. Go to YouTube and go to, it's called the Peek. Tell me again so I get it right. Peek at the Gators.
A peek inside Gator
Peek
football.
inside Gator football. I'm sorry. I should know it by now, but my brain's addled tonight. So you'll have to forgive me for that. But anyway, everybody knows where you are because you're getting lots and lots of followers. Go on, subscribe, and do the same for me, by the way. We're way behind Ali, but we're just building up our viewership on YouTube, doing more and more there. And you go to YouTube and go to the Buddy Martin Show and subscribe. It's free. And tell your friends and neighbors to do the same. So that's about that. Ali, here we are. We're getting ready to tee it off here. I mean, it's practice starts this weekend. I got my notification today from Rick Hurtado about practice, getting our guys together to go there. And don't know what we're going to see because we don't get to see too much of practice.
Sure.
But I know we're all kind of fine-tuning our prognostication, whatever you want to call it, of our brain, and thinking about what is this team going to be. And honestly, we don't have much of a clue, but I've got a feeling here I'm going to share with you tonight. I'll see if you share it with me, and we'll talk about that. And that has to do with how much does it count when you've got a player who loves the team, loves being there, wants to be there, a leader, somebody who says, I was born a Gator, I'll die a Gator, I bleed orange and blue. And, I know not everybody can do that, but I think we've got one in Austin Barber, and you'll hear a bite from him on that. And I think that's the kind of thing that can negate all the other noise in the system, as Ron Zuck used to call it. You can overcome a lot when you got people who really care about their team. Even though maybe you weren't born here and didn't grow up here like Ali and I did,
Right.
you can still fall in love. So what do you think about that aspect? That's a great equalizer if you can get it.
So I think that every successful team has players that just bleed for the school that they play for. I think when you grow up a Gator fan or a fan of whatever team, it just carries so much more weight. It just wins mean more, losses mean more, the off season means more. I know that not everybody can grow up the fan of the college team that they end up playing for, but I do think it's really special and it's a necessary ingredient for long-term success, honestly.
Yeah, you got to have that. That's got to start someplace.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to come from. I mean, Florida was lucky with Steve Spurrier. Georgia's lucky with Kirby Smart. When you got the roots down, it's organic the way it's grown, but they can't all do that. The question, and I've used this analogy before, it's a golf analogy. Ben Hogan, all right? Ask your grandfather about him. He was a great player and golfer before my day, and he invented practice, quote unquote, in golf. And he said the secret is in the dirt. And that kind of goes with this, I think, this program. If it's in the dirt, I think Billy Napier will find it. And I like his methodology of digging down, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I think that he looks at more than just what these guys are putting on film. I think that he looks at their relationship with their families. He gets to know their parents. He gets to know their high school coaches and kind of know like what they are about as people completely away from the football field. And I think that that's part of his recipe for building this roster is guys that fit together, that guys that believe common goals, in common goals, and guys that have certain personality types. And I think that that is important because you can't just recruit, a roster of 5 stars and have no idea what they are like personality wise, what their families are like, what they've been through, anything like that. I don't think you're going to find success that way. I think that, maybe you win a championship, but it's definitely not sustainable. So I do think that this is the right approach. It's the slower approach. So Gator fans are going to have to be patient. But I do think if you're going to build a program versus building a single championship, this is the way to do it.
I had an opportunity to talk to Urban Meyer at pretty good length last week. And one of the things I got into with Urban, he's great along these lines because he's a psychology major, which, I got into about how the sausage is made, I mean, we all know he won championships. I mean, think about this. He never won fewer than 11 games at Ohio State. Fewer in all the 7 seasons. And, of course, we know about his 2 national championships. He's up for a Ring of Honor this next year. But the bottom line is we talk about how do you do. We know the recruiting is what it's about. There's a lot more that goes into the chemistry, the development, the chemistry, et cetera, and how that's made. And he had some very interesting comments. And, of course, that Netflix series is coming up here in a few weeks. That what they're having on the 2018. He talked about that, and he's pretty dicey about it. But anyway, so I'm interested in how the sausage is made. It's made differently in different times by different people, right? So you never know. There's different ways to do it. But,
well, I think, when Urban was the coach at Florida, it was such a different time from the NIL perspective, transfer portal perspective, that I would be interested to see what kind of coach Urban is today, because I do think that I don't know that his methods then would work now. And I would be interested, but I think he was always on the cutting edge of adaptability. Everybody was always chasing him because he was always the leader in terms of whatever was new and whatever was innovative. So I'm sure he would have adapted, but I can tell you, I can't imagine that the way he coached back then would work today. So college football has just changed so much. I think when Urban was there, I don't want to say it was easier to keep players' egos in check, but you didn't have this extra money floating around like you have now. And so Urban was the coach. He's the person in charge. He is the authority figure. I feel like those waters get a lot more muddied now when you've got players making thousands and thousands of dollars, and these bidding wars that happen to get guys even just to come to a visit on campus. None of that existed then. You came because you were interested in what that coach had to say. You were interested in that school and that program. And that's a lot more straightforward, I think, than it is right now.
We're going to talk a little bit tonight about loving the school and loving what you're doing. I thought Kingsley Algonquin's comments, and you heard last week, we played when Rob interviewed him and asked him about that. And he said, hey, look, I want you to want to be here. If you want to go down the road for $2,000 more, be my guest. But we want you to be a Gator. And there's a certain amount of that pride. I think it's bubbling up now. I don't know. I think that will come back in some fashion because I'm interested as I do these interviews. I did about 15 of them last year. And this is my first in a series with Austin Barber. What I found out was when I talked and dug down, Ben Trubin, I dug down, and you've talked to these players too, is it really wasn't always about making more money to buy more shiny things for them. Quite often it was like, I can pay my mom's rent for 6 months, or I can help my little sister buy a Girl Scout school, or whatever. There's a lot of that going on. They're not all money-hungry, greedy people, but it does taint the game. And you're right about Urban. He would tell you the same thing. He in fact, I asked him about, what could he tell a Coach Napier and about recruiting or whatever, and he says, I don't think I could help him because it's a different time, different way, and he knows what he did then worked well, but
100%, yeah.
What do you know about Austin Barber?
So I actually had Shannon Snell on yesterday. This video is running today. A former All-American, and I asked him, like, if you could name one guy on the offensive line that you think is just going to have a breakout year, he said Austin Barber.
Wow.
He said he has just been so impressed with him. He talked about pulling him aside during spring and having some conversations with him because he said that Austin is his own harshest critic and that he just cares about being perfect on every play, and that Shannon kind of pulled him aside and was like, listen, you're doing awesome and you're not going to be perfect. That's not how this works. And told him, like, take it easy on yourself. You are working your butt off. You are doing great. But he expects a huge, huge year out of him. And Shannon gets out there all the time. He watches practice multiple times a week. He's super connected inside the program. So when he says that, like, this is the person to watch, I 100% believe him.
I'm with you on that. He knows his stuff, and he knows his cooking too, by the way. His ribs are pretty good. I'm glad you said that because my takeaway was on him, and we'll play a little of this. Number one, he's very bright.
Yeah.
And he also is focused, really focused. He's loving the summer workouts with his team, which is hot and hard, as you know. And he has a sense of pride about the whole offensive line, and he thinks they're a really good bunch of players. One interesting thing, I don't know if we'll get to it in this part of the interview, was he's actually from Baker County.
Interesting.
And my all-time favorite Gator football player from Baker County is one that your grandfather wasn't there then, but your father would have probably known, Larry Dupree, the great running back from McClenny. And he told me, he said, I went to Larry Dupree's wake, and my father tells me I'm some kin to it. So he's my guy. I discovered Larry Dupree playing for McClenny when I was covering high school football. Couldn't understand why the Gators didn't sign him. Saw him do some amazing things. And then Tommy Shannon says today the greatest football player he ever saw at Florida was Larry Dupree. Now, I know that's ancient. I know people say, well, come on, please. But it's true. But it was really amazing that he has a connection. Let's play some Austin Barber and a few minutes of it, and we'll stop it. And let's see what he has to say, all right? I hope he gets to the part about why he likes to be a Gator. Tell me across right now, right, just from one tackle to the other, you'll be one of them, obviously. Who you think will start in what places, and give me a comment on each one.
And coming from spring, we had some guys that would play, different positions or whatever. And, I think we have a lot of guys that can come in and play. And, I think we have a guard that Micah Mazuka. He's a really good player, really big, strong
Mhm.
athlete, and right behind him, you got Najee. I mean, he had a lot of reps in spring. He had a lot of experience in the practices and things like that. He's really young, but he knows what he's doing. He can come in and play. And then we got a returner starter, Kingsley. Everyone knows Kingsley. Everyone knows how he is, and he's a leader on this O line. He controls the offensive line sometimes with the mic IDs and things like that. And then you got another person that's really stood out to me is Richie Leonard. He's
Little Richie, they call him, because he's the smallest one, right?
Yeah, he likes to call himself Big Richie, but
6'7", 300. That's not too little in my book, but
he's really smart, really athletic. He knows what he's doing, and he can move people off the ball. I think he's really special talent in my opinion. And then you got we brought in a few tackles. You got Damian George. He got some big time reps in spring, and
Alabama guy. Huh?
Yep, he's big. He can move. He's athletic. And then you got Lindell. He comes in and works every single day. He's putting the time and putting that effort in, putting the grind. And I think I'm excited for every single person on this O line just to grow in the year two, and I'm really excited.
He lost one. He went home because to Kentucky. His mother was sick, and now I guess George moving his place probably.
Yeah, I don't really want to speak on his personal stuff. That's for him, but anything for him I can do for him I'll do it. I mean,
Sure.
He really deserves the world. You know what I mean? But yeah,
it's a brotherhood. I know. I get it completely, and it's difficult. Well, I've always looked at the offensive line as kind of a unit, almost like a basketball team. You got a starting five, and you got guys come off the bench, and you interchange a lot. This offensive line interchanges a lot. Now, you're obviously a tackle. Can you give me one or two players on that offensive line that you respect and like, and tell me something about them that makes them outstanding offensive linemen?
I think any two is Kingsley and Richie Leonard. I mean, they've played snaps here. They know how to win games here. That's what we need. We need some guys that are experienced that can help these younger guys come in and learn the playbook, learn the system, and things like that. And they've done a really good job with that. And those two guys are some of my good close friends are on the offensive line.
All right, so you got this guy named Graham Mertz.
Yep.
We heard a lot about him, and you've seen him. I've heard people who know the position have seen him, like him a lot, and like the way he plays. He's started 30. Have to hear the rest of it tomorrow night. I don't want to go too far, but all right, give me your take. What'd you get out of that?
Really well spoken, humble, wanted to give credit, to all the guys around him, and it seems like a workhorse. And I mean, those are the kind of things that you want out of your offensive line. And honestly, he mentioned so many guys. I think that speaks to exactly what Shannon has said, and that this offensive line is actually deeper than people realize. There is a lot of guys on the two deep with real experience. And I think that Florida's offensive line last year obviously was very good and, led by Osiris Torrance, and replacing him is going to be hard because he's an All-American. But the fact that this year's line is actually deeper than last year's line should help us when you get deep into that fourth quarter and guys are just dead. And we didn't really have that luxury last year. So, while I don't think we have necessarily the star power that we had last year, although we didn't know at the beginning of the season we had star power. So, I mean, some of these guys could be just as good, and we'll find out. But the fact that we have more, I think, is a really good sign for this upcoming season.
I played a game what I call SEC poker the other day, and where you get to buy the number of wins that you want. And with my three pals, where we auctioned off how many wins they would get. Okay. And my pals on there, Kyle, I think was on, Lauren, David Whitley. We started out, okay, we'll open it up at 5 points. Who will take Florida at 5 wins or 5? And then you know how it goes. You auction it off. Where do you think it wound up, and who do you think of the 4 people picked the highest number?
Well, I don't think it was you that picked the highest number. I don't really know the personality of your other players, but I'm going to guess.
What would you take?
I think Florida wins 7 games. I think the ceiling is 8. I think 7's probably more realistic.
Okay, so you're not going to go but 7. Is that what it is? You
Yeah.
got to pick a number.
All right, I'll stay at 7.
Stay at 7. Well, you did the same thing that Lauren and Kyle did, and David.
Okay.
All at 7, and somebody went 7.5, and it was moi.
Okay, I did not look at you, positive Polly over there. I did not expect that.
And I thought about it because I had a talk with myself. I said, Self, this country was built on dreams, all right?
Right.
I mean, we always had the great American dream. What does it say you're not allowed to dream a little bit? And I asked Urban about this too. When you're making your goals, like every team does, you think about which way to go. Yeah. And you obviously have to reach a little bit sometimes.
Yep.
Are you willing to reach a little bit on this team? And not to be, positive Polly, or whatever you call me, but I think I could easily just go 7 or 7.5. I could easily go 8, but I'm not going to go 8. But I'm going to. But I did because you got to go 7.5. You get to get 8. So I went that way because I've tried to talk with myself, and I've not made the final prediction. But right now, I've leaned into this poker game, and I've got 7.5. And if they did win 8, and by the way, I talked to a really good friend of mine who's an extraordinary handicapper and does it for a living. Danny Sheridan, you might have heard of his name. He has clients around the world in college football. And he told me, the best I can do for you, buddy, is 6 and 6. I said, okay, well, that's what you got. And he said, but next year, I'm going big on him. 9.5, whatever it may be.
Oh, and the hardest schedule in the country. That's
next year, yeah.
Cool.
So anyway, so I think it's going to be all right. So we got a couple of people. Joe Blackburn says he's going 8. Let's see who else is going 8. A couple other people. Anyway, a lot of YouTubers on tonight. Ali must have followed you over here. They're all jumping on this thing, talking about YouTube. Glad to have it. Here's one going 9. Look at this. This guy's going 9.
I mean, if you think about what you need to accomplish as a team year 2, and I think that is win the games that you are supposed to win, right? That's got to be the first step. Right. If Florida wins every game that they are supposed to win, they should get 7 wins. So that leaves Utah, Tennessee, LSU, Georgia, and Florida State. So if Florida loses all 5 of those, that's when they sit at 7 and 5, as long as they win the games that they should win. I do think there's a decent chance that they can upset at least one of those teams and maybe 2. But
now you're talking yourself into it. Yeah, you are. You're talking it up. You're coming on over to my side.
They still have to win the games that they're supposed to, though. That's the issue.
Well, they.
That's where Florida has struggled the last few years, is that they do sometimes show up big. Think about Utah last year. I mean, they were in this LSU game for a long time. They were in Florida State. They were in games they weren't supposed to be, but then they dropped the ball against teams that they should have taken care of. So step 1 is take care of business. You take care of the games you should win. That's 7. All right. So we do that. Then you can give me a gimme. And, listen, they come out, they go to Utah, they win that game. I might be coming on this show telling you all sorts of lies about what's to come the rest of the season. But
I want to make you eat your breakfast out of that helmet if they do. That's
hopefully they do. I think Utah is probably the most beatable out of those 5 that Florida won't be favored in. But somebody on there, David says Tennessee won't win in Gainesville. Listen, Tennessee struggled in Gainesville, and I don't know that I'm so sold on Milton or Tennessee just yet. They're going to have to show me something. But if Florida comes in having beaten Utah, they're going to be riding a momentum wave. And I think that there's a lot better chance then that they take care of business, because the stadium's going to be rocking. The fans are going to be out of control. 7:00 night game. If they're coming in 2-0, that Tennessee better watch out.
I mean, the back half of the schedule is brutal. I get it. The front half, if you are able to beat Utah and Tennessee, you may be 6-0. Now, I know that's a reach. But I'm just saying, if you dream a little, let me say to you, all right, if I said to you, Ali, you're picking 7, right? Name the 5 games they're going to lose. And I can make a case for at least 3 of those where they might not. So
Sure.
those games could go in that 3. There 2, I think we could probably say for sure, we'll know the 2 they're going to lose, LSU and Georgia. But let me tell you something about Kirby Smart. I talked to Urban Meyer about this last week. There's a little history here about this. It's not just hard to win national championships. It's harder to stay up that level. And things start slipping.
True.
Things start slipping. Look at Carlos Dunlap when he got coming home from a party and got pulled over. Everything went
to motivate a team when you're the underdog, when no one believes in you but your coach. It's a lot harder to control the egos once you get to the top. It's a different ball game. I have said that for a decade. It's the staying at the top of the mountain that is the real struggle. And I don't know, outside of Nick Saban, and I think you could probably put Dabo Swinney in there, I don't know that there's a college coach that has really done that successfully, this past 20 years.
Yeah, and let me say this. If you say, here's what I don't like about Florida, I think there's some answers for most of those things. Like if I said to you, what's the weakness, Ali? What would you say?
I would say quarterback, and coming in from last year, defense.
Okay, now let me just say to you, number one, Austin Armstrong is a very bright young guy. Corey Raymond is going to be taking over the secondary. Their coverages are going to be completely different. Everybody talks about how fired up they get with Austin Armstrong. And I asked Urban, how well do you know Graham Mertz? He said, I know him quite well. I recruited him. I spent time with him. What do you think of him? I really like him as a quarterback. I like the way he throws. I like his action. I like him a lot. Okay, well, now, he did start 35 games, okay?
Yeah, he did.
And Urban said he talked to the coach, Paul Christ. He said he didn't have a very good cast around him.
That's true. Wisconsin was incredibly inconsistent, and I think that led to a lot of Mertz's issues at Wisconsin. And you're right. He was the most experienced guy in the transfer portal. He's actually going to have way more starts than the guy that we started at quarterback last year. Obviously we all know Richardson went on to be a first-round draft pick. So I just think as long as Mertz plays close to mistake-free football, that's all we can ask. He's not going to be asked to win football games. He is going to be asked to manage football games and not make big mistakes.
Get him out of bad plays. Hand the ball off, throw this play action pass, and don't throw picks. That's what you want out of him.
That's it. Rely on your running back duo, who is one of the very best in the country.
Probably trio now.
Jim Carroll will offer some, change of pace this year as well. Florida's running game should be incredibly strong. They have some good young wide receiver talent. They have Ricky Pearsall coming back, and they have a talented offensive line. Graham Mertz, honestly, doesn't have to shine. He just has to not mess up.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. All right. Well, we're talking ourselves into an undefeated season here. Just about we better stop. But I want to get with you on a couple of things. We talked earlier about secrets of the dirt, getting back to basics, teams, trying to get rid of all the influences of the NIL transfer portal. Nick Saban said some interesting things about the portal during the SEC meeting. Not sure if you saw it. He obviously says he's willing to adapt and have everything thrown at him. He says, but he says Saban has remained constant, finding success no matter what. Even with the advent of the transfer portal, Saban has won, and won some more. However, the Crimson Tide head coach explained he doesn't want to lean on the portal, opting to build his team the old-fashioned way. Really, it doesn't change your day-to-day life, says Saban. I think it creates some management challenges and opportunities that you just have to adapt to. It is what it is. You don't have to like it. You don't have to dislike it, but you have to deal with it on a day-to-day basis and try to create an advantage for your team. And I think that's what makes Saban so. Saban has had an amazing ability to adapt. Look at the assistant coaches he's lost.
Yeah.
And remember, it wasn't until really late. Alabama never had a Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback for a long time. They had a bunch of them. So
managers.
What's that?
I said that's because they had game managers.
Yeah, well, but some would say Danny Werfel was that, although Danny Werfel certainly threw a great pass, for sure. System guy, you know what I mean? But okay, so let me just give you the floor. Nick Saban, what's it all about? Can he do it this year, or is it past his time?
I don't think that it will ever be past Nick Saban's time till he tells us it is past his time. I think that he is one of the innovators in college football. I think when you piss him off, then everybody has to look out, because that's when we get one of those just Alabama seasons. But think about college football. Take the transfer portal out of it, take NIL out of it, and look at the SEC over the last, let's say, 30, 35 years. You get Steve Spurrier that comes in with the fun and gun, revolutionizes the way that the sport is played in the SEC. Then you get an SEC that kind of goes back a little bit they go to the spread, because Urban Meyer comes in, throws this whole new scheme at you. Everybody rushes to catch up. Everybody switches to the spread. Then Nick Saban kind of kicks it back to where it was prior to Spurrier getting here, where it's just pound the rock, game manager as a quarterback, big guys. You're going to win the line of scrimmage. It's not going to be flashy offense. It's going to be incredible defense. You're going to win championships. We've been, at that really for the last probably 10 years. Then Kirby Smart comes in, and Kirby Smart, does something a little bit different, and he starts to win some ball games. And I think that causes Saban to adapt. You look at the last couple of Alabama teams, and they have had more quarterbacks that have gotten, Heisman trophies or had great spotlight in them, gotten drafted high. They have cared more about their skill players. It's been a shift, but I think that what eventually put Kirby on top was going back to that Alabama model of running the football, big, giant lines. So I'm interested to see what Saban does, because he's shown us he can adapt. He adapted to the spread. He adapted to Kirby starting to, get on his tail by getting better quarterbacks, getting better skill positions. And now Kirby's beat him with his own method. So what Nick Saban does next will be telling as to whether Alabama's got more in the tank with him as a coach. But I would not pick anybody against Nick Saban. He is such a phenomenal coach. He has dominated this league for more than a decade. I'm certainly not taking Kirby Smart over Nick Saban.
Well, they tell me down in Baton Rouge, Brian Kelly's got moved him out, so he's the man. They're going to win. They're going to win it. And a lot of people have picked him. Some guys are picking him to go 12-0, and they're loaded with talent. Okay,
on his accent.
Is Brian Kelly that good a coach? Was he just lucky, or can he repeat it?
I mean, I think he inherited an incredibly stacked roster. Mm-hmm. If you look at LSU's signing classes, I believe that they averaged number 4 in the country the 5 years previous to Kelly taking over. So he inherited a ton of talent. And I think Kelly can coach. I'm not saying that he can't. I just don't know that he was a weird fit for me at LSU. I don't find him authentic. I don't know how I think the type of players that they traditionally get from Louisiana, from Texas, relate to him much. We'll see, right? We'll see how he does on the recruiting trail for the long term. But it's a weird fit to me. But if you're a halfway decent coach, you should be able to win with the talent that LSU had when he got there. So it's not surprising to me that he did well year one. He should. Anybody that didn't do well with that talent year one, there was a huge, huge problem.
Well, let's tell the truth, Ali. You're a Southern girl, and you don't like his fake accent, okay?
I mean, that was still pulls it out. It's just
I'm with you. I get what you're saying. I don't disagree with you at all. I kind of agree with you on that thing. A lot of people are throwing bouquets at Kentucky. Mm-hmm. I know they got Cohen back, and he's got a good quarterback. I think Kentucky's always going to be Kentucky, right around that 8 wins, whatever it might be. They're picking Florida to be behind them and all the way down the bottom with Missouri and Vanderbilt, the guys in the SEC. They think Tennessee is the second best thing behind Georgia. Maybe they are. And even South Carolina. When did South Carolina become an SEC power, please? What was the score of the Florida-South Carolina game last year? Excuse me. What was it?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Huge.
Yeah, we'd have to look it up, but big.
Yeah. I want to say somebody knows, like 37 to 8, yes, I don't know, whatever it was.
And then they went ahead, and everybody was so surprised. Then they went ahead and beat Tennessee the next week. I mean, and it's not that they're not a good team. They are. They're just a middle of the road team. But it's it's almost disrespectful to Florida. But you know what? That's great bulletin board material. Nobody used bulletin board material better than Urban Meyer.
No doubt about it.
Wallpaper that locker room with it. And I hope that Nate's taken a page out of his book. Hey, the only people that believe in us are inside this building.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's circle the wagons. Coaches love that paranoia. You know, everybody hates us. Circle the wagons. It's just us. We got to prove it. And it's a smart strategy because it seems to work. I mean,
it's a good motivator. But there's honestly, if you're looking at talented on rosters, there is zero reason Florida should lose to Kentucky or South Carolina.
100%. 100%.
More talent in this locker room. And I think a better head coach as well. But just comparing talent, there is zero reason to pick South Carolina or Kentucky over Florida.
It's an insult. It really is.
It is.
And so we'll see where it goes. But all right, so we'll get into this in a second as soon as David gets here. But we're going to talk about the news out of Colorado, how the Pac-12, what's left of it, is tumbling down like Humpty Dumpty, you know. And boy, have things changed. And if you project that for where, let's say, look what's changed since last year. Think about what in 2 years when they play in the 12-team playoff. You know what's going to happen to some of these leagues. It's a lot of change. I said this before, and I believe it's true. There's been more change in college football, and will have been after this year than there were in probably the 50 years prior to it. I mean, you're talking unbelievable, right?
I mean, incredible amount of change between the transfer portal, between NIL, just rule changes. There's going to be more of a running clock this year. The conferences are expanding at incredibly rapid rates. The 12-team playoff. It's a different game than it was 5 years ago. Strategies that worked 5 years ago won't work now. It is interesting to see what we're coming into, but I think super conferences are eventually the way that this heads, which I don't love. I love, the traditional conferences of college football. But I'm really interested to see how this playoff works. I think that there's a great chance it just means there's a whole lot more SEC teams. I don't think that it changes.
How many will get in 2 years? How many teams, in all likelihood, in your opinion, how many will get in?
I mean, I think it's possible 5 SEC teams get in.
5. That's a lot.
Well, and the hard thing is it will depend on what they use as their criteria. If you're only looking at win-loss records, when you look at those SEC schedules that start next year, look at the fact that Texas and Oklahoma are joining the conference, it is impossible to say that there is another conference in college football that is even in the same stratosphere in terms of toughness. So hopefully the committee is going to reward more than just wins and losses, because that is going to hurt the SEC. We beat up on each other all day, every day, essentially. But as long as they take into account quality of opponent and strength of schedule and things like that, the SEC should get like 5 teams in, which, is crazy. But I just don't think that the 12-team playoff changes the eventual outcome. I think whether it's the BCS or the 4-team playoff or the eventual 12-team playoff, the cream rises to the top. So I guess we're just essentially getting more games, because I don't think we're getting a different winner.
I get a little nostalgic though when they say, well, no more divisions.
Yeah.
I didn't think I cared about that. No, well, I kind of like that in a way, and then it's going to be different. I'm guilty. I have campaigned for this playoff for half of my life. And right now, they have to do this. They have to do this. Now that we've got it, I'm a little threatened by what might be happening, because a runaway freight train with lots of money is a dangerous thing. And as someone pointed out, it's no longer going to be the Power 4 or 5. It's going to be the Power 4, because the Pac-12 is going to be gone, Sure. So it will be an amalgamation. At some point, I said it before, it'll be the top 60 teams. Split them up however you want to and play it down. We'll see. But that's my thought about it. And I as much as I wanted it, Ali, I'm a little afraid. Are you?
Yeah, I'm sad about the divisions. I'm interested to see if, you got a whole bunch of teams with 1 or 2 losses, how they really do all the tiebreakers, because, one of the biggest ones is when you look at like opponents, but there's multiple teams that only play like one or two similar teams on that schedule that came out for 2024. So I don't even know how you, like Oklahoma and Texas, I think basically play the opposite of everybody the entire time through, except when they play each other. So I don't even understand how that's fully going to work in determining who goes. I think for a very long time, we always thought the East was the more dominant division. And then that switch sort of happened. And then the West became the harder division, with Alabama and LSU becoming dominant. Texas A&M flirts every once in a while with being good there. Arkansas did for a little bit. So, I mean, I think that basically tells us that they were pretty even because we have gone back and forth so much. I don't love the getting rid of the divisions, but I do love the concept of the two best teams in the conference playing each other.
Or maybe, but then three. David's here. Quick commercial. Right back after this with Ali and David, Sweet and Sour. Stay tuned. You guys have done so well in your business, but take me inside the organization and tell me, what's it like when dad and son kind of get in there and don't agree on things?
Well, there's two dynamics going on, right? It's lawyer to lawyer and father to son. So sometimes, when the father and son stuff goes on, you have to take a break for a minute. You just say,
take a beat. Yeah.
I'm gonna go get some coffee. I'll be right back.
That's better than shouting. Shouting doesn't work. No, for sure. Well, being in my business, I have my son Brendan also worked with me. And it's been a test for both of us. I pity him. It's like I pity Carrie having to work for you. But bottom line is, it's an honor. Really.
I know your son, and he's a great kid. Yeah. And we're both very blessed to have our kids work with us. And look, it's a blessing in most regards. Sometimes it's challenging. However, there's a level of trust that you have with family that you can't replace with anybody else.
Meldon Law, where they don't back down. So check them out. They also do law, by the way, instead of crack jokes. Let's bring our partner in, the other half of Sweet and Sour, Mr. Sour himself. I think I'll start calling him Mr. Wonderful. David Moulton. What's up, David?
How are you, buddy? Ali, I hope it's okay that I traveled to Jersey last weekend to see my mom. I hadn't seen her in a while. And whenever I go to Jersey, the two things that I have to get are pizza and Chinese. And so when I was having a sweet and sour dish, I had to tell my mom all about you. I go, just so you know, your son's part of a sweet and sour bit. She just kind of looked at me. I go, oh, yeah, it's a hell of a career your son's got going on here. Yeah.
I love that so much.
We'll have to have that Chinese food on the air one night, sweet and sour, as we're talking about this.
You can get a sponsor, buddy. You can get a sponsor.
Hey, listen, you're the big sponsor guy. You know everybody. Ali's the one who knows everybody. Okay, so we've had a nice conversation tonight about we had Austin Barber on early, and I a bite at least. And Ali and I were both impressed with him, an intelligent young man. And as Ali pointed out to me, among the people who are big admirers, Shannon Snell, who's been a former player who, of course, is a well-known cook and what have you. And he told somebody, you tell it, Ali, what did he say about him? He thinks he's the brightest star in the whole offensive line.
I asked him if you could tell me one player that you think is going to have a really breakout season. He said that it was Austin Barber. He said his work ethic is unmatched, that his attitude and approach to the game are incredibly impressive. And he just could not find enough good things to say about Austin Barber. So if that, Shannon Snell knows what he's talking about, offensive line and barbecue. So if it's one of those two things that he's talking about, I'm a believer.
Yeah, David's not very happy about it. Anyway, so
I'm listening. I'm listening.
Here's the other thing. When did we tell
you?
I got
a lot going on. My apologies.
Yeah, that's okay. I got you. You're good. You need to take a break. That's fine. We're here. I just want to say you're going to hate us when we tell you this. We auctioned off wins last night on my show with the 4 people. See who would go the highest. And Ali and I talked about it. We're going to give you the same chance. And we'll see David will figure this out right away, I'm sure. But we wound up at the, you how it goes. I'll take 6, I'll take 5, whatever. And so the number got to 7, and 3 people stopped, and 1 person went to 7.5. Okay, it was Kyle, it was Lauren, it was David Whitley, and me. Which one went above 7?
Lauren. Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I said.
I was just listening to you the last couple of weeks. You sounded like a guy who was going to settle on 6 and 6.
I had a change of heart. I've seen the light.
Yeah, you always do at the end of the day.
Well, here's the deal. Now, look, I did base this on this country was built on dreams, right? There's nothing wrong with a little dream. And I talked to 2 people that influenced me a lot. One was Spurrier, who pointed out to me, we'll have it on next week, when they beat Clemson, which they had no business doing, he was at Duke, had no business doing, that's what got him the Florida job. That game got him the Florida job, okay? 1 game, all right? And then I talked to Urban about it. He's a psych major. And I asked him the question about, dreams and goals are not exactly the same, but they're kind of the same. And when you talk to a team, and Ali, you know this, your husband played, everybody's, I think the person getting off the Mayflower was named Peek and played. Anyway, the point is that the people who deal with this kind of stuff, Urban said, absolutely, they have to be dreams. And you have to be able to back it up, obviously. And he's a psych major. He said, I know about this. He said, you have an hour and a half? Because I could talk about it for an hour and a half.
I understand. My thing, you just mentioned Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer. Mm-hmm. Okay, neither one is coaching the Florida Gators this year. And while we're
wait a minute.
Hold on. Sorry. We're all on board with what Billy Napier is doing. Billy Napier has a lifetime to go to get in the same sentence as the 2 guys you just referenced. Mm-hmm. Let's come on now. That's number 1. Number 2. I
didn't put him in there. They put him in there. It wasn't me.
No. Well, you just referenced what Spurrier and Urban Meyer said. And Billy Napier is a long distance phone call away from those 2. But secondly,
I knew you'd come here with negative crap. Go ahead.
No. It's just really the 2 greatest. You're putting Billy. Anyway, I can't even believe what you just did. But first off, their personnel is not great. It's at best, it's pretty good. What I do think Florida can do, forget dreams, get an attitude. Do the whole everybody thinks we suck routine.
We just talked about that. We're
going to shove it up yours. That needs to be their motto.
That's what Ali and I finished talking about a while ago.
Yes, right. Forget dreams. Yeah, be angry. Okay, do the whole disrespect card. Okay, that's the card that Florida, by the way, never gets to play. So play it, which hopefully you'll be playing it for the last time in a very long time. But I do keep going back to, and I am guilty of focusing too much on a schedule. Best case scenario, it's really difficult to do better than 8.
I agree.
It just is with their schedule. That doesn't mean they can't get to 8.
7 for that matter. I get it. It's very difficult.
So it gives them very little margin for error. I could make in an absolute best case scenario, I could go to 9. Okay, but realistically, I think their ceiling is 8. The floor is 5. If I were to bet, I'd bet 6 or 7, which in both cases is an over. So I'm betting the Gators over. Mm-hmm. I'm just not betting them, to be. Yeah, I'm not betting them to be, one of the surprise teams where they sneak into the top 25 at the end of the year. That's all.
Wait a minute. Did I say that?
I don't know what you said.
Well, you didn't listen.
Okay. I just got on the show 6 minutes ago. You didn't say it's in the last 6 minutes.
Typical, you come at the last minute, you give me all the answers, and you didn't hear the first 45 minutes. That's okay, David. I love you. I'm only kidding you. All right, so let's go to Switzerland, Sweden, whatever. Neutrality here. Ali, say what you think.
I mean, as we already talked about, I think 7 or 8 wins is possible and probably the ceiling. Like I said a few minutes ago, you got to win the games you're supposed to win. If you do that, you win 7 games. If you win every single game you should and lose every single game where, it's going to be a coin flip or you're going to be the underdog, you end up at 7-5. So I don't think that's that bad a start. I just think it's pretty hard to get over that. You are going to have to upset somebody. My fear is that Florida does upset somebody or two, but they drop a South Carolina or a Kentucky or a Missouri, something they shouldn't lose. And those are the games I'm going to be looking at this season. I don't really care if they beat LSU, Georgia, even Florida State or Utah or Tennessee, because we're not supposed to. I care way more that they beat Missouri and they beat Kentucky and they beat South Carolina, because that's where the progress is. Beating the teams you should beat is the progress.
David?
Well, and in a best case scenario, I mean, they've got 4 top 15 opponents on their schedule. Okay. And so in theory, then it's win all the rest.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Now it'd be a bummer, obviously, to lose to Utah and to Georgia and to LSU and to Florida State, especially at home. But if that's where those programs are in relation to you this year, I think you just have to grit your teeth and bear it for one more year. But now all the other games are winnable. They are not going to be easy, but they're all winnable. Okay. And once again, see what I need to be proven wrong. And I know that Ali and Buddy, you have talked to people much closer to the program. I don't think they have a quarterback. I'm sorry. I don't. And it's tough to win without a quarterback. It is, especially if you're playing a bunch of one-score games. It's tough to win them all if your quarterback's not going to do much to help you win. So I need this quarterback to prove me wrong. And if he does, they can win 8.
Okay. So based on what, you don't think he's any good? What's the information and insight you have to say? I don't know.
Wisconsin.
Okay.
He started for 3 years at Wisconsin. They couldn't wait to get rid of him.
35 games he started.
Right.
And by the way,
couldn't wait to get rid of him.
Okay. Well, all right. Some people want to get rid of Anthony Richardson too. But anyway, the point being that I get what you're saying, but I'm trying to put my evidence on what I learned, what I'm trying to learn talking to people. I don't know, David. So I ask, like you and Ali, I'm a reporter. I ask. I don't know. And when I ask someone like, shall we say, Urban Meyer, to drop a name, because I did, and say, do you know Graham Mertz? Yes. What do you know about him? I've had him tried to recruit him real hard. What do you think of him? He's a really good quarterback. Really? How does he throw? He throws really good. He's smart. Okay, that I'm just saying that's what he said. All right. I said, what do you think happened in Wisconsin? And you said that. He said, Paul Chryst told me, and Paul Chryst would know, that the cast around him was not very good. I'm just saying. That's what he said. So there's some
like I said, I hope I'm wrong. I mean, the offense was atrocious in the spring game. Well, that's another thing which I'm trying to block out of my mind.
Yeah,
is
I get it.
Just,
I don't disagree.
Honestly, a high school team could have been done better on offense against the Gators defense than the Gators offense did
David,
that night.
you're the one who told me.
Buddy, stop interrupting me.
No,
I'm entitled to my opinion.
I know you are, and I'm entitled to argue
telling you what I think.
Yes.
You don't agree with it. That's okay.
No, I didn't say that.
I'm telling you where my bias is against this quarterback and against this offense.
I'm okay with that. I'm saying,
and I'm wanting to be proven wrong.
You told me once or more than once.
You just keep drinking the Kool-Aid. Everybody's great.
Now you don't hear
Everybody's great.
Now you're not hearing me. I'm saying to you,
because nobody's bad. Nobody's bad, which is funny because the team's gone 6-7 the last 2 years,
I didn't say
and nobody sucks.
Now you're putting words in my mouth. What I'm saying to you is, you told me on several occasions you would never judge a team's offense or whatever on a spring game. You told me that.
And I said I'm trying to wipe it from my memory.
Look,
the only time I've seen him in a Gators uniform, he was horrendous.
Okay,
horrendous.
I'll give you that. Right.
And Wisconsin couldn't show him the door fast enough.
What's funny about it is you and I are close to saying the same thing, agreeing on the number. I'm not saying they're going to win the SEC East or they're even going to win 9 games. I know some people who think like Shane Matthews thinks they might win 9. I'm with you on that. I know it's a reach to get much past 7 games. I know the quarterback has to prove himself. But I'm just trying to learn, which is why I listen to Ali, because she seems to know more than I do. And I'm trying to find out what went wrong at Wisconsin. I don't know. I don't have the answers. So we'll see. So now if you want to give us what your number is, David, your hard number, you going with 7.5 or 7, or what are you going with?
No, I would go with 6.5.
6.5? Okay. I think Ali stopped at 7, right, Ali?
I did. I stopped at 7.
Yeah, okay. That's fair. Nothing wrong with that. You know, I tried to eliminate some people last night by saying, tell me the games they're going to lose. And there's 3 or 4 obvious ones we talked about. But there's some that are coin tosses, right?
Well, I mean, Ali, I don't know about you. See, I only think there are 3 L's. Like, to me, by the end of the year, the Florida State game should be in play. And I understand Florida State right now is better than Florida, but that's a rivalry game. And by the end of the year, Florida, I think, has a lot more room to grow during the season than Florida State does. I mean, Florida State's starting in the top 7. The Gators are starting with an over-under of 5.5. So the Gators can grow into this game. And as we've seen, I mean, hell, the Gators gave them a hell of a game last year, for goodness sakes, in Tallahassee. Mm-hmm. So who's to say that a year later that they couldn't give them an even better game in the Swamp, in which, who knows, they may be playing to knock Florida State out of the national championship picture also.
Well, we can only hope. This is what I think. Florida's got to win early because the schedule, Buddy and I talked about this, the first 6 games is a lot easier than the last 6 games. And I just think when losses start to pile up, it hurts morale. It hurts the locker room. Sometimes it's hard to get out of that funk. So that's why the end of the schedule is scary to me, because I can see that losses spiraling into each other potentially. Now, if Florida loses to Utah and they lose to Tennessee and they haven't played any of those tough games at the end of the schedule, it's hard to figure out where you then get those 7 wins, because I don't see how you turn around that locker room and give them something to continue to fight for. Now, in Billy Napier's defense, Florida was never quit on any game last season. Even games where, they were really no longer in it on paper. There was never any quit in this team. But they lost almost every coin flip that they were in. So just because they were 100% in it with their heart didn't necessarily give them the W. Those coin flip games are where Florida's got to come out on top more often than not. And like I said, they've got to win the games they're supposed to. Vanderbilt's not supposed to be close. Missouri's not supposed to be close. Kentucky's not supposed to be close. And I understand we all think South Carolina's great, whatever. That's not supposed to be close. But those games were all close South Carolina wasn't, but last year. And so those are the things that Florida needs to fix first before they even worry about whether or not they're going to compete against Florida State or LSU or whatever. But let's see how they do against Utah. Let's see how they do against Tennessee. If they lose those, it's going to be a long season.
I think Ali, Buddy, mentioned the key game to the season. I really do. It's Tennessee. If you win it, you can now go, okay, well, now they should be able to beat Kentucky and beat South Carolina. And now you look and you go, maybe the only games that we should be in danger of losing are the 4 games against the top 15 teams on our schedule.
Right. And that's how it goes.
Okay?
You're right.
Right. I really believe, week 3 at home, the whole deal. Tennessee hasn't won in the Swamp in 20 years. That to me is the circle game.
No question.
It's going to be a shot in the arm.
Yeah, it's the teeter-totter game on the season. Right. Whichever way that game goes, I think is how the season's going to go.
Could be a big springboard. It could change everything, as Ali says. If they did beat Utah and suddenly beat Tennessee, now you look at the first. I mean, I hate to say it, that could be 6-0 if we're going in, but now the back half is another matter. Look, I'm not being Pollyannish. I know they got some trouble, some spots and things, and we don't know. That's why we're talking about it. And I don't just mean to disrespect your opinion, David. In fact, we're pretty close saying the same thing. You're at 6.5, I'm 7.5, whatever, and we'll see how it plays out. This is just preseason talk, David. We do it every week almost.
Ali, here's my question for you and for all Gator fans. And like the gentleman says, he's going to get me a Florida State hat. It's funny. I just said Florida, I think, has a real shot to beat them at the end of the year.
You did say that, yeah. You did say that, yeah.
But once again, hear what you want to hear. Here's another issue that I think Florida is a year away. Where are they very good? Not pretty good.
Running back?
Right,
good. Yeah. So you think they're very good at running back? I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where else are they very good? And because you know what I mean by this, you're in the SEC, you're playing also 2 top 15 teams non-conference, maybe even 2 top 10 teams non-conference, and I mean, you got to be really good in areas to beat teams like that. And I just don't know outside of running back where Florida's really good. Where are they very good or even better?
I think their offensive line is very good.
Okay.
Things that we've heard about their offensive line are really positive. And then flip side of that, defense is a massive question mark. I think they have the ability to be really good. We just haven't seen anything yet. It's going to rely on new coaching, different guys in positions, guys we have coming from the transfer portal, young guys. So it is a question mark. I might have a different answer 6 weeks into the season, but right now I think running back and offensive line are the only two you can point to and say they're very good at those positions. I think everything else is a crapshoot.
If the offensive line, and aren't they replacing 4 starters, but if the offensive line, is as good as people think it can be, the top part of the SEC, once you win up front, it's a lot easier to win games. And what has happened to Florida defensively in the last few years? Florida's getting beat up front defensively.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the first. Forget DBU. I want to see the Gators in the trenches on defense stop getting their butts kicked. Come on now, guys. That's 100%. How you get off the field.
100%. This recruiting class. I mean, D-line has been such a focus area for them. They know. I think that there's a great chance that D-line's a year or 2 away from being very good. But I do think the defense as a whole should be much improved. It's going to be hard for them to have been worse.
Yes.
But I do think that there's a defensive improvement there as well.
I agree. I think schematically they'll be better. They'll be sounder, I think, this year than they have been.
I hate to sound like a broken record, David, but I respect your football knowledge, and I respect Alex too. And I've said this a number of times, and I said it again in my interview with a young man who's going to be on the show again tomorrow. The full interview will be on tomorrow night with him, and I encourage you on YouTube especially to watch it, because I think we found somebody in Austin. I think we found somebody who's going to speak, who knows the game, who's going to be a star. And I think, Ali, as you said, he's a guy to watch. and so we'll see. But I wanted to say to you, David, and talking ball, and I'm not an X's O expert, but what you just said, get off the field. By the very nature of the fact, number one, the clock is shorter. Now we know because they don't stop it as much. That means if you can run the football, and what is Billy Napier trying to do, Ali? Run the football. He's got 3 running backs now. 2 very good ones, and none of them they're going to hear about. And you've got a quarterback who can hand the ball off and get him in the right play. And I'll trust Urban Meyer on that. We'll see. Then if you can just get a couple of stops, and David, they couldn't stop anything for all the.
No.
If they just had 3 stops last year or 4 stops, changes the complexion of things. So that's the only hope I have for them. They're short in personnel. They don't have the great experienced players yet. But I think that's how Billy's going to play it, David. Don't you think that will make a difference? And so, how much?
Well, as Ali pointed out, they seemingly lost outside of Utah. I mean, really, and what are we talking about? Getting off the field, making the one key stop. They got the interception in the end zone. That's why they won that game.
Right.
And seemingly, they didn't make a defensive play the whole rest of the year. So you're right. I mean, they make 2 or 3 more plays on defense. All of a sudden, a 5-6 win season becomes an 8-win season.
Yeah.
And they're going to have half their schedule, which are 1-score games. And Ali rattled them all off, but they got to beat Missouri. Kentucky's picked to finish ahead of them. South Carolina's picked to finish ahead of them. Tennessee picked to finish ahead of them. Well, if you're going to have a good year, you got to win those games.
Yeah.
Agree. I want to talk to you before you get out here, David. I know it's past your bedtime, and mine for that matter. Someone said today, there's no longer there's no longer a Power 5. As of today, it's going to be a Power 4. Colorado now looks like it's going to the Pac-12, which was predicted. What does that do to the landscape of college football? Never mind the Pac-12, but going to the Big 12, that changes things dynamically. It's been reported today. What about the landscape now of college football if this happens, David? And you too, Ali.
Well, here's my question to you, Ali. When do you think, and even if, the SEC and the Big Ten expand beyond the 16-team conferences that they're going to be next year? Because both commissioners, Petitti yesterday and Greg Sankey last week, both kind of incredulously looked in the camera and said, we have no plans to expand. Sankey said, we're just going to welcome Texas and Oklahoma in and we're good. And Petitti yesterday said, how about if we just manage this whole USC, UCLA thing and let's just see how that goes? So my question is, there could be 5 or 6 schools who leave the Pac-12 because there's reports that Oregon State is also going to leave along with the Arizonas and Utah. I mean, this could be a mass exodus here. So I don't know if it's going to be the SEC and the Big Ten that get bigger, but my question is going to be, what's going to happen to the ACC?
I think the ACC is the next domino to fall. I personally don't have any interest in the SEC expanding. I don't have any interest in any of the teams that make sense geographically for the SEC. I wasn't even a huge fan of adding Oklahoma and Texas just because I didn't want to get any bigger, but at least they're storied programs. I think money is what will determine what happens with that. TV deals will determine if these conferences expand. And let's be honest, they're what prompted the expansion that we currently have as well. So, the game will follow the money, unfortunately, but I hope the SEC has no plans to expand. I do think the ACC is going to fall. I think Florida State has been shopping conferences, for a couple years now, and they're not even hiding that fact. They would love to join the SEC. They would accept joining the Big Ten. I don't know if the Big Ten would take them from an academic standpoint. But I do think the ACC is the next domino that goes.
If you were running the Big 12, Buddy and Ali, and you get 2 phone calls in the next 24 hours, one is almost a half a dozen schools from the Pac-12 that want to come, and the other's half a dozen schools from the ACC who want to come, who would you take? Because my understanding of the ACC bylaws is 8 of the 15 schools have to raise their hand and say, we want out. And if they do, then all the contracts are null and void. Well, the thought is that if 6 of the schools raise their hands and say, we want out, that Carolina and Virginia will go to the Big Ten. So that's how they'll get to 8. So if you're the Big 12, Ali, who would you want? The half dozen from the Pac-12 or the half dozen for the ACC?
The ACC. I think that if you look at television, viewership, you've got to think those East Coast schools are going to bring you better numbers than the cast-offs that you're going to get that are left in the Pac-12. The big schools from the Pac-12 are already jumping ship. So you're not going to be left with major brands, and they're on the West Coast and their games are played at, they joke about the Pac-12 after dark. That's literally what it is. So if you're looking from a revenue standpoint, I think the East Coast, the ACC schools are what makes more sense.
Yeah, I think there's at some point maybe geography might come into play, although that's gone out the window a long time ago when you got Rutgers time. Yeah, right. But the fact that there's some history, the old Big 8, as you know, Colorado belonged to it. There's a little history there in terms of what will be the Big 12 now. I don't know how it's going to shake out. I think my thing is long term. Whatever they call it, they're going to put all the names of the teams in a hat and say, okay, each division of the country has a conference, and the lead dog here is the Southeast. And we divide up the teams accordingly in divisions, and we just have one gigantic conference with divisions in it. I don't know. Look, you're going to get down to the top 60 teams anyway, 60, 65 teams. Television will dictate exactly what they already are about what's. And by the way, they hadn't even mentioned, and probably shouldn't have, we probably shouldn't have mentioned the Mountain West either. I know you got to go, Ali, so I understand that we kept you past time. We're about ready to wrap it up. We'll say goodnight now. Great stuff. Thank you, David. I still love you. Ali, thank you for hanging in there with us. Appreciate it very much. We kept you a long time tonight. Sorry about you got all those babies back there. Thank you. Great job, both of you. Okay? Thanks a lot.
Bye,
Ali
buddy.
P, thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care, buddy. Bye,
All
Ali.
right, thanks, David. All right, so get interested in talking about stuff and forget that we got people who got lives. Our bad. All right, so it's a good conversation tonight. We got going and we couldn't stop. I want to say thank you to our sponsors tonight. Of course, TitanMRI.com and our friends at Meldon Law. And, of course, Red Star Medical Research, which is always our special friend. We appreciate very much them doing what they do for us. I want to tell you about Red Star. If you don't know, you should know by now if you heard this show. They are a highly rated, first-class, patient-centered clinical research facility in downtown Ocala. They do great work. Cutting-edge stuff on things like research trials for Alzheimer's, dementia, psoriasis, osteoarthritis, migraines, fibromyalgia, all that stuff, along with many other conditions that affect us right here. And they like to have these clinical trials because they want to bring you, other people in to take part in them because they want to know what are things about your DNA that matter that they can help find the answers to in terms of treatment. We're going to start participating in more than 700 of these clinical trials, continue to partner with prominent pharmaceutical and biomedical companies throughout the medical industry. Check them out on Renstar.net. Find out if you're eligible. In some cases, time and travel, you can get compensation. Renstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. Great show tonight, folks. Appreciate it very much. Don't forget YouTube. If you're not on it now watching this, go to YouTube, subscribe to the Buddy Martin Show, and we will build our channel up to a point where we're going to do some exciting things. Again, thanks to Austin Barber, thanks to Ali Peek Wilbur, and thanks to David Moulton. Have a great night. Back tomorrow night with Orange and Blue Bloods right here on the Buddy Martin Show.